Well, hello strangers, how are we going? Happy 2025. I hope everyone is having a great year so far. We are sitting down to film the first video of the year, and why not, even at the end of January, not make it about goal setting, because I feel like we talk about this a lot. Everybody gets into the mood of goal setting, and a lot of people set them for New Year's, and don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of New Year's resolutions. They've brought a lot to my life, as we know, basically changed my entire life. But January for a lot of people is quite miserable, and they really struggle in January. And it's only in February where people start to get in the groove and they start to fire up a little bit and they really start to know exactly what they want to achieve. So in this video, I want to talk to you guys about the best ways that you can set goals, and maybe some ways that you haven't really thought of, and then how you can work towards them. I do actually also want to do my annual goal review, which in January each year I tend to make a video and review my previous goals from that year. That doesn't make sense. And review the previous year's goals and see if I achieved them, and then also discuss what I want to achieve this year. But I think I actually might put that into a separate video. So this one we're going to focus more on how can you set goals, maybe some ways you haven't really thought about it, and then actually putting that into action. So let's get cracking with how you can actually work out what you want to achieve, because that's a pretty important place to start. It's important to have an idea of where you want to get to so you can break it down and know how to get there. Otherwise, you're kind of just stabbing in the dark. That being said, I also live my life like that sometimes, a lot of the time, let's face it. And I also think there's merit to that. But it is nice to have something to work towards, and it definitely makes it a little bit more easier to have a routine, to be able to push through those lulls in motivation, because as we know, it's not going to be there all the time. That would be unrealistic. So ipso facto, it's definitely something that's worthwhile. And one way that I think is really great at setting goals, rather than the traditional what do I want to achieve in a year or in 5 years, is actually to forward pace and think about your life in a year or in 5 years' time, and what you would like your life to look like, or what you'd like to have achieved in that period of time, to then feel that you've been successful, that you're proud of yourself, whatever the feelings are that you want. I've done this now for a little while, so instead of thinking, oh, this year I'd like to achieve that, I think about this time next year, me sitting here, let's say filming this video, saying, I achieved this in this year, and I was able to manage this and overcome that, and it gives me a much clearer vision of what I want my life to look like and whether I'd actually like that. So this really works well if you're a big picture thinker, because you can really create a narrative and decide whether you would really enjoy that or not. So for me, I can think this time next year, I would have liked to have grown Made Wild, and we would have run multiple in the UK and overseas group trips, and I will have consistently uploaded videos, and I will have unlocked different fitness goals that I have as well. So ask yourself, where do I want to be? What does my life look like? What does my day look like? What do my hours look like? What have I achieved in that period of time? And does that make me feel good? Does that add to my life? It's actually quite interesting, because I think it was over Christmas or New Year's, I kept getting influxes of social media posts about asking ChatGPT to create a day in the future. And I was like, oh, this is literally like what I do, but I just do it in my head. And so you can do this now, where you go into ChatGPT, give them a bit of information about what you think you want to achieve or what you want your life to look like. Write me what my day will look like in a year or in 5 years' time. And once you read that, you can then decide, yeah, do you know what, that does sound perfect, or do you know what, I don't think that does sound great, and maybe I need to do some tweaking into what my goals actually are. So that might be a really good idea of what to do, because it will help you gain some clarity and perspective on what you want to achieve. The second method is no new method. It's a classic, but it's also really, really helpful. And I feel like over the last few years, I have become much more open to the idea of doing this, which is writing your goals down and having a vision board as well. I always feel like I was like I don't need to write them down. Vision boards, nah, not for me. But over the last few years, I have slowly been doing it a bit more, and I haven't been taking it seriously. But sometimes things will happen and I just think, that's just a little bit weird that that happened, because I remember making a vision board that I've never actually looked at, and somehow everything on that vision board is now in my life in some way or another, or something that I wrote down actually happened, but I don't ever remember revisiting that or actively working towards it. And I'm not saying that you can write something down and it's just going to magically appear in the next year out of thin air, but I do think it just gets into your subconscious when you write something down, or you have a visual reminder of it, that this is what I'm going to achieve, and you start to subconsciously adapt your behavior to then make those things possible. Am I sounding a little bit woo-woo? I don't know. You can let me know your thoughts down below. But if anything, it just makes you sit down and think about what do you want your life to look like. So last year, I made a Canva vision board, And I sat down to go and start screenshotting images to put on it, and I genuinely was like, oh, I don't know what I want my life to look like in a year or in 2 or 3 years time. And I had to really think about, okay, what do I want my business to look like? What do I want my personal life to look like? What do I want my relationships to look like? And by doing that, it gave me a much clearer vision, but it did take me a while to really peter out what I wanted in my life. Also, I think then when you write things down, you have that focus, but it also makes those goals a little bit more tangible. You have a little bit more of a physical reminder of what they are. I have my laptop here, and I'm just going to see if I can bring up my Canva board, because when I put stuff on it, I really wasn't 100% sure what I wanted, and like I say, I had to think about it. But now I look at it, and a lot of the things on there have come to fruition. But if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be like, oh yeah, that is basically what she's achieved. So this was what my Canva board looked like. I don't know if you can see just reflection, but lots of mountains, different interiors, fitness, the business side of things over that side, doing YouTube, working on the go, and basically, in a nutshell, this is what my year looked like last year. I think that's a perfect summation of it. And things like this, like leading group trips, I've done multiple of those now. I did my mountain leader course. And that brings me on to another point, which is I had a whiteboard, and at the beginning of last year, I just wrote about 6 personal goals that I had onto that whiteboard. To give you an example, one was to go on a skiing trip, one was to do my mountain leader course, one was to do more solo travel. So things like that. Just I put that board away. I couldn't see it. It was just in my office down the side of a cupboard, and never really looked at it again. And it was only when I moved house and started cleaning out everything, I came across the board and I was like, huh, I've actually achieved every single one of the things I wrote down. And again, it wasn't because I was seeing it every day and I was going, oh yeah, I need to work towards that. But I do think because I had written it down, I had a clear idea of that's something that I want to achieve. And I subconsciously was working towards those things in the background a little bit more. Or when the opportunities came along, I was able to take them because I had a clearer understanding of that's what I wanted to achieve. I hope this is making sense or is motivating in some way. Now, there is multiple ways in which you can do this. Obviously, you can just literally write down your goals on a journal. You could put them on a page that you can see every day. Whatever it is, there's lots of different options, and there's lots of different resources that you can find to do them. So I think it's just about finding something that works for you. I recently, I don't have it with me, bought an Instax printer, and it is incredible. I think it was about £80, and you can print straight from your phone, and it will just spit out a Polaroid type looking picture, and I can use that to put on my vision board. So I use that, I use words that I like, and it's something that I've been working on, but you'll see that in the other video about specifically my goals for 2025. But that is a really great tool. Otherwise, like I showed you, I've used Canva, I've written things down on a whiteboard, I've even written things down on scraps of paper and just thrown them into a journal or thrown them into a book as a bookmark and never really revisited them. But nearly every single time, everything has actually come to fruition. There is also a really great book, and I think I've mentioned this a few times, which is The Source by Tara Swart. She has some great journaling tips in there and journaling prompts, but also it's just a really nice science, evidence-based version of manifestation and vision boards and goal setting. The last one I'm gonna mention is kind of more about how you can achieve your goals, but it's also a way of thinking about setting your goals, and that is focusing on habits more than the end goal. So it is great to have an end goal that you're working towards, or a big finish point that you're working up towards, but to actually get there, it's much better and easier and more motivating to break that down into habits that will get you there and that you can tick off as small wins or small progress markers. Now, this probably doesn't sound unfamiliar to you because it's a concept that's come from a very popular book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I actually have it here because I lent it to one of my friends and she gave it back to me the other day, but it is a brilliant book. I recommend it to like nearly all my clients. It's very quick and easy to read, but this is basically what he talks about. He talks about breaking it down, creating an environment to make the habits as easy as possible that you need to do to be able to build up to that bigger goal. This is a really big game changer for a lot of people, and I definitely noticed it in myself as well, because instead of just focusing on the bigger picture and thinking that, wow, that's really far in the future and it's going to take me a long time to get there, you can instead break it down and focus more just upon showing consistently. And if there's something that you know I love on this channel, it's talking about consistency being important. So if you can break things down and make them as consistent and sustainable as possible, that's always going to be a winner. Don't forget that small habits compound into big changes over time. So battery died, but battery died at the perfect time because we're moving on to the next bit. I will just set you up. All right. So we know what our goals are. Now, how do we actually achieve them? Well, the first one is make sure that you're being specific about what you want to achieve. So it's all well and good saying, I want to get fitter, but be more specific so then you can break them down, like we said in that last point. So thinking about specifically what you want to get fitter in. Do I want to get stronger? Do I want to get faster? Having a specific number that you're reaching. So I want to be able to run a half marathon or a 5K or a 10K in this time, or I want to be able to run 100 meters, or I want to be able to lift my own body weight in the gym, or something along those lines. So you get the point. Being specific is going to be much more helpful in terms of being able to put those habits in place to be those building blocks to then work towards that goal. If you've come from any type of education or corporate background, you probably would have heard the SMART framework. So it's about making your goals specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. If you've never heard of that before, I will put a little bit of an explanation in the down bar below so you can have a little bit of a read. But when you're setting goals, you can have the idea and then you want to really niche down using those points and start thinking about, okay, what specifically do I want to achieve? What measurement am I using? What time frame, etc. And it'll be really helpful in terms of having those nice detailed goals that you want to achieve. Now you've got that, we're going to go back to that focusing on habits and not necessarily just the goals. And you're going to start working out what you need to put in place and what you'd be able to do consistently to be able to achieve that. For example, if your goal is to be able to run a 5K in less than 30 minutes, then what does that actually look like in your day-to-day life or in your week? So it could be, I need to run 3 times a week, and one of those runs needs to be pushing that pace a little bit, so I'm always trying to progressively overload them. It might be that you want to lose X amount of weight. Let's say you want to lose 10 kilos of body fat, and so you could focus on nutrition, and you could say, well, to do that, I'm going to make sure that half my plate has got lots of vegetables and volume, which is going to help me eat a balanced diet, make sure I'm getting my nutrition in, and also feel fuller as well. When you focus on these daily actions, you're creating systems that make the big goals inevitable. And remember, one of my favorite sayings is consistency always beats intensity. So try to think tortoise in the hare, slow and steady wins the race. You don't need to go out all guns blazing. Make it something that you can maintain for a long period of time and that you can be consistent with, because that will 100%, without a doubt, always win in the long term. Next up, and you guys would have heard me say this many times, but it is so important, track your progress. Please track your progress. I know sometimes you don't want to, especially when it comes to things like weight loss and fitness. We kind of want to bury our heads in the sand sometimes. I know that I did when I was losing weight. I was terrified of taking progress photos or doing measurements and that sort of stuff at the beginning. But if you can separate yourself and just start to see it as data and think about the bigger picture this time instead of just the day-to-day that we're looking at, it will be really beneficial to be able to have that data there to lean back on, because there's going to be times where your mind plays tricks on you and it tells you that you're doing a really crap job. For example, me right now in my luteal phase, feeling like the world is crumbling down around me, that I look like a potato, that my fitness is awful, and that I'm a giant imposter. But I can rationally look at the data, and even though my mind wants to tell me it's wrong, I can say, yeah, but I did a 7K run this morning at a quicker pace than I would have done this time last year, so I'm definitely not less fit than I was last year. But not only is it motivating, but it also keeps you accountable. And a really good example of this is people that track their calories. So I see this time and time again. If there's a client that I'm working with and they choose to track their calories, they'll track the good days, and then they'll have a day where they eat a little bit more or they go over what they wanted to, and they just won't track it. So in that scenario, I always encourage them to just track regardless, because one, it gives them accountability, but two, it also makes you feel less afraid of the outliers, and you can start to look at the data on a bigger picture and say, oh, okay, so there was a week or a day where I ate more, or I didn't do as much, or I didn't work on my business, or whatever it might be, but actually look at the data, everything's growing, everything's good, I'm losing body fat, or I'm maintaining it, and you have that data there to then show you that it's actually not so scary having a day off or having a week off. Or conversely, if the outcome isn't what you expect, you can look back and say, okay, maybe I can see why that's actually happened, because I have been eating over my maintenance, or I haven't been working out as consistently as I thought, which is fine, but it just justifies why you're in the position that you're in, rather than just thinking, do you know what, it's me, I can't do it, I'm rubbish, and I'm just gonna throw in the towel. In terms of how you can action this, there is a trillion different ways that you can obviously track your progress, and it's also dependent on what you're tracking, but there is loads of apps that you can use to track things. I love a good old journal, or just using my notes on my phone, really, really handy. Obviously it's there with you all the time. Talking to other people, telling people what you're trying to achieve, and having them keep you accountable, also a really, really powerful tool. accountable. A lot of people that I work with in terms of coaching, that's one of the biggest benefits they get out of it, is they just have someone there who's keeping them accountable, who's soundboarding, who knows what they're trying to do and is there to support them, but ultimately will also call them out if they need it. And just to squeeze in one more reason why you should track your progress is because when you have achieved what you want to achieve, there will be so much satisfaction, I promise you, in being able to look back and either have the data, the photos, the videos, whatever it is, to show where you've come from. You will be so immensely proud of yourself when you have that and you can go, wow, that's my hard work and I don't have anyone else to be thankful for other than me, and you should be really proud of that. And that's something that I learned the hard way, because when I was losing weight, I didn't do any of that sort of stuff until about 6 or 7 weeks into my journey. I never showed my fitness beforehand because social media just wasn't a thing back then, not like it is now where people are always videoing themselves. Like, selfies didn't really exist, and it wasn't even that long ago, it was maybe like a decade ago, but I don't have any, and I really wish I had, because I would love, just personally, to look back and just think, oh my gosh, all that hard work that I put in every day when I came back from work and I did that workout in my flat for an hour each night, and I was so rubbish at it, and I remember yelling and being like, I can't do this, I'll never be able to do it. And to look where I've gotten to, it's just so powerful, and I only have the memories and they're like fading. So I just want to make sure other people don't lose that opportunity to be proud of themselves. And it's not just health and fitness related, it can be to do anything, personal development, relationships that you have in your life, work and business, the list goes on and on. So track your progress. And I think finally, I kind of have another one, but I think finally, celebrate your wins. Like, give yourself some credit where credit is due. It might not always be going your way, but just be kind to yourselves, because life is short. We're all trying our best. Life is messy as well, and we're all just trying to do our best. So let yourself be proud of yourself. Look at what you're achieving and celebrate those things. Give yourself a pat on the back. You can always put something in place where you actually physically treat yourself to something. So for example, I'm doing this, so I'm gonna go and get my nails done, or I'm gonna purchase myself some new gym gear, or I'm gonna treat myself to that trip that I wanted to go on, or to that day out, or whatever it might be. But honestly, just sitting down and just looking at what you've achieved and saying to yourself, okay, I've done this, I've done that, I can be proud of myself, and even writing them down. One great thing is to go through your photos, your albums, your videos, your logs, whatever it is, kind of like the progress tracking sort of stuff we were talking about, and just look at how far you've come. Honestly, it's so motivating, and it's something that I don't do very often, but when I do it, it just gives me so much fire in my belly. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is amazing, and I want to keep going. So honestly, celebrate your wins, and if you can't do it for yourself, then go and ask somebody who you're close to say, I feel like I'm not achieving anything, and then they can list off so many. That does perfectly kind of bring us to the end of this video, but there is one more thing that I just wanted to quickly mention about goals, and that is that they will change, and even once you achieve them, the goalpost just moves a little bit further away. So while it's important, and like I say, having goals changed my life, literally my entire career, the way my life is, that just everything is changed my life, just from having a simple goal of losing weight and then a simple goal of being able to do a chin up. My goals have also changed significantly over time, and it's constantly weaving back and forth, and you'll see this in the goals video that I'm filming. It is constantly fluctuating. So kind of expect that might happen, and also don't berate yourself if it does. That is a part of the process, and embrace it, and maybe just change direction for a little bit, and know that probably in a few months' time, that direction might change a bit, and that is totally okay. That is totally normal. And anyway, before it gets any darker, I'm going to love you and leave you. I hope that's given you a little bit of direction, or a little dose of motivation to maybe sit down and set yourself some goals that you want to achieve, and also just appreciate how far you've come from, because we're all out here trying our best. If you have any more tips, feel free to drop them down below. You can always head over to Instagram, message me over there. I love hearing from you guys. But otherwise, welcome back to the channel. We've got an exciting year ahead. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have the most beautiful day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.